4, 3.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Toso, and thanks again for joining us, and welcome back to another edition of the Starboard Portal. We have a great treat for you today, a little bit of local knowledge share and schooling from Rochester, New York. And we're really excited to have Travis Odenbach and Kris Werner on the show with us today. Kris Werner and Travis Odenbach will discuss how they prepare for regatta at their local club, which is Rochester Yacht Club in Rochester, New York. Rochester Yacht Club has hosted many world championships, North Americans, and national championships over the years in fleets including Lightnings, J22s, J24s, J70s, J88s, Melgus 24s, more and more and more. And I think they have some bids out as well for some major national championships for 2021 and 2022 as well. So we're very excited to have Kris and Travis here today. Travis is the one design coordinator for Quantum for the classes of J70, J24, and J22. And he's also a Rochester local, grew up, born and bred in Rochester at a Rochester Yacht Club, still lives there today as well, too. And I think just has recently a new daughter as well, too. So I'm sure she'll grow up in the junior sailing program there at Rochester Yacht Club. And Kris is the owner and operator of Quantum Sails Rochester Loft, and been there for just over 15 years in Rochester and grew up sailing in Long Island Sound as well. So we're really excited to have them here today. And if you enjoyed today's session or any of the other sessions that we have on the Starboard Portal, please support our efforts to build a community of active, engaged sailors through the Starboard Portal by purchasing and renewing a U.S. Sailing membership. We have a lot of great content coming up in the schedule, and thanks to U.S. Sailing members, we're able to adapt and evolve to better serve sailors with content like this. Please visit mem.ussailing.org to join and renew your U.S. Sailing membership today. Now, without further ado, I'd like to turn the reins over to Kris and Travis. Drop a little local knowledge on us, boys.
Excellent. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. Thanks for having us on here. And like Josh said, I'm Travis Odenbach, working for Quantum Sails at One Design, and Kris Werner is the owner of Quantum Sails Rochester. We're super pumped to be able to be on this show today and, hopefully share some little tricks of a very tricky venue that we have here in Rochester. And as the old saying goes, when you guys show up to a regatta here, we always say, oh, it's never like this. So hopefully what we give you gives you a little insight on how we prepare for the regatta and, what we look at, about a week out for weather and everything. So I'm going to have Kris Werner share his screen, and we're going to go through, we're going to start out with current in Rochester, which sounds crazy being on a Great Lakes, but we have current. We're going to go through the typical wind directions that we deal with and some, what happens when a front or a big storm comes through. And then towards the end, we're going to go through a little bit of boat setup. No matter what kind of boat you have, I think that the setup is very similar for all of them, depending on the directions here. So Kris has the presentation pulled up here, and the first section is about current. Is there current in Rochester? And the answer is yes. And it all depends on kind of on the wind direction and how much rain we've had. So our race course is typically about 2 miles out from the pier here. And, during the day at a regatta, obviously on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, we're a little closer to shore and it's a little more fun. But we try to get out away from land as, if we have a south breeze, it's pretty shifty. So the river here, Genesee River, that we're located on, actually is one of the very few rivers that flows from the south to the north. And, with this outflow of the river going into the lake, typically this river will flow and bend to the right or to the east, obviously. And, that causes inshore, you to have a little left to right current depending on where the breeze is coming from. So if you're looking out north, it's left to right current. Depending on rain, we end up with a half a knot to a knot and a half of current. It's pretty, it's all dependent on rain and weather and wind. I'm going to turn it over to Kris here to explain what he sees when this, what we look for on our typical nighttime sailing with this current and light air that we usually have, but also kind of what the lake is doing about a mile out, because it's different. So Kris, you want to take over a little bit and explain the, what you see with current here in Rochester?
Yeah. So, looking at this screen here, just showing sort of a Google Maps view that anybody can pull up of, our Genesee River. You can see my mouse here. Here's the Rochester Yacht Club where my mouse is. And, you're sailing out this river, which is, a ton of sediment. It's really, the river's cleaned up a little over the years, but it's still very sort of chocolate milk looking and has a lot of sediment. And so when that pours out into the lake, it's actually a pretty helpful indicator as to which way this current is going in the lake, right? So if it comes out of the river, a lot of times if there's very little current, you'll just see this outflow sort of ending straight out and then the water turning clear and not much bend here. And there's other days, if we have a very strong westerly for a bunch of days and it's pushing that, west to east current, this river bend of sediment will take a hard bend, this way with my mouse here, just kind of showing you that, the current is pushing that river current that's outflow, one way or the other. So that's sort of a good first indicator, on your way out to the course, you can kind of see which way this is going. Sometimes it'll spread, on either side of the river, and just be murky all around this area like a mushroom and then just drop off into clear water. Then it's a little harder to say. But as Travis was talking about, one of the biggest things you can look for obviously is just first the fact that yes, it's a lake, but we do have current. It is very dependent on the weather pattern over the last few days or the days leading up to an event or an evening race or whatever you're doing. So yeah, and there are some websites and other things that I'll show in another slide here that you can check, which is a little bit helpful, a little more helpful if you're doing a longer distance race on the lake than the real finite area of Rochester, because a lot of what you can tell is just, looking at buoys and kind of figuring it out on your own just for short course racing. But yes, I mean, just to reiterate Trav's point, a lot of times what ends up happening is the wind pushes the water of the lake, sort of to one end of the lake. And then at some point that's going to almost push back and the lake current flips the other way. So there are interesting scenarios where it could blow, 20 out of the west for 2 days straight. And then the day after that, it's light air. You still have a strong westerly current. Like Trav said, could be up to a knot at times. It can really get going. And then oftentimes, a day later, it'll come back from the east and completely switch directions the other way, even though you haven't had a new weather pattern or wind from the east. So I don't know.
Yeah, I remember J24 Nationals is a pretty good event to look back on and see how wacky Rochester can get. We had a northeastern for about, 3 days beforehand, and each night it would blow out of the northeast, and then during the day it would die and we'd have waves. But even though the wind was kind of right of where we're used to and our normal thermals and everything, it still paid to go left. So you knew that the current was still running east to west, and it really wasn't so much shifts that you were looking at. So it's a very, one thing I would say about Rochester is it's pays to look a long ways out in the forecast and see the trend over the next, 4 or 5 days. And then at the end of that, if you could start seeing something trend, what kind of weather you're going to have towards the end, and just keep an eye on it. Always practice at this venue if you can early, because you can kind of get into a groove with the weather and understand what's working. So that's awesome. I mean, current, you don't think about it being on a lake, but we deal with it. I think we've really underestimated it in the last few years. And it's something I've really looked into in the last probably 2 to 3 years, because I felt like that was the next step besides just wind and shifts. So
yeah,
for
Trav,
one design.
If you want, I'll just go back to this shade here. I'll just touch on this. I guess if you want me to show the link now to that, or we can just go over there is a link that I guess we can share at the end that'll show you lake current.
We'll show that all at the end just so that
Okay.
people can kind of take a copy, you know, picture of it or whatever if they want to use it in the
Right.
future.
And the one thing to just look at here again with this course area, it's not, I think Trav would generally agree, there isn't a ton of areas where we race to seek current relief. Certainly not when we're hosting major events. When we race Tuesday nights and things, we're a little closer to shore here, then yes, there is some relief into shallower water. But generally speaking, when we talk about the current, it's just making you aware that it's out there. It can be pretty, pretty strong, but in general, it's not as if there's some shelter to really find on the race course, one way or the other.
Yeah, correct. I mean, this is, you know, we all know Rochester in the summertime is pretty light, and this is kind of where this comes into play, especially if you're close to shore. You know, you may pay attention to a little bit if you're 5 knots or under 7 knots, but once the wind starts moving pretty good over 8 knots, you're not thinking about current. Maybe at the ley lines you're thinking about it, but for the most part, you're playing your oscillations or your shifts, depending on where the breeze is coming from. And so just, you know, being aware in light air that there is current in Rochester, New York. And then, you know, as the breeze starts to come up, start thinking about normal sailing. You're just sailing with breeze, wind, and hopefully hitting the right shifts. So, Kris, with that being said, let's move on to the second one, which is, so which way would we go? You know, which way do we go in Rochester? This is, you know, this is pretty funny because a lot of us that grow up here have a saying for the Rochester, and we call it Leftchester. The majority of the time, we're going to be going left in Rochester. I would say if you went left in Rochester 80% of the time, you're probably going to be just fine at the top weather mark, the first weather mark. So, you know, there are those days where, yeah, the right works, and that's those are some frontal days or, you know, some big rainstorms coming in. But like I said, with the current that we have and then our gradient breeze being out of the southwest west, which gives us a geographical shift, the left-hand shore is a pretty nice place to be. So, you know, the one thing I will say, there's a bunch of wind directions that we use here. I guess the most normal wind direction that we have is southwest to west. If it's, you know, that's our gradient. If we have you know, a really hot day and we're going to have some sort of a thermal, Kris and I have argued a little bit about this, but it sounds like we've both landed on the thermal will kind of switch on at about noon, 1 o'clock. The strongest usually it'll get is about 12 knots, and it's out of the north to northeast. You know, the wind's really got to die out of the south for this to happen. And that's why usually it's so light, is because those two breezes, the south and the north, really like to fight each other. We're actually kind of tucked in a bay here in the lake. So it's really hard for that sea breeze to come into this bay. Kris, you want to talk a little bit about what you see over the summertime and during the day, especially because I know we all, you know, us in Rochester sail at night a lot. We don't sail during the day here a lot, only when major regattas come in. So
Yeah.
you want to kind of touch base on what you see during the day here?
Yeah, the day is a little bit different, which is why a lot of times I think, you know, it's not always the Rochester people that have some huge advantage at regatta time because, you know, like Trav said, a lot of times we're just doing the weeknight racing. We don't race here a ton of times, you know, midday or, you know, 10, 11 a.m. We have some weekend events, but yeah, so I think during the day, you typically have a prototypical Rochester summer day is you actually get sort of what I'd call a reverse sea breeze. You get sort of an offshore dump around, you know, midnight or sometime after sunset. Typically, once the lake is warm, you actually get a pretty nice offshore flow. And usually that lasts until about, unfortunately, right about the time of when you'd start a first race, you know, 10-ish a.m., sometimes sooner than that. So you will get that nice offshore flow. So a lot of times you're sailing out in a regatta, you know, you get out there early, you have a nice offshore flow. If it's a nice hot summer day, unfortunately, that's probably going to go away unless there's strong forecast gradient to go with it. And that's what Trav talks about is you do get sort of a day when there's some westerly gradient, you'll get sort of a slow bend of the breeze from the south, to the west, and then maybe into the northwest if you get a little bit of that sea breeze influence. So as the day heats up, you'll get a little bit of that bend, if you will. Now we keep talking about going right, but the wind will sort of clock a little bit to the right as it's trying to kind of become a sea breeze from that, I'll say 15, 015 to 30 direction. Let's say if it was a totally dead flat high pressure day and the breeze was dead when you got out there, you might expect a light sea breeze to fill in from that direction. Is sort of some of the things that I see going on. So I think those are, some of the things that I'll look at from that standpoint as to what happens each day here and which way the wind shifts. The big thing, to reiterate what Trav says, we are in a bit of a bay here. There's not a lot of, the city of Rochester is actually pretty well south of the lakefront. So we unfortunately don't benefit from the heating of, lots of buildings and parking lot and asphalt and all of that will really help build a sea breeze. So it's tough. A lot of times we get our best sea breeze in the springtime here, right around this time of year, because the lake is still very cold compared to the land. Midsummer, an August sea breeze, doesn't pack much of a punch.
Yeah, that's very true. Midsummer is a tough time, but we look at all these directions, right? And then this is kind of the trick of Rochester. You come out of the pier, you look left, there's a point out in the distance. It's called Braddock's Point. And Mark Sertle, one of our good friends here, he's kind of said to us, well, if it's a little bit right of that point, you're probably okay to go to the lake and go right a little bit. If it's left of that point, all day you're going to be going left. So those are when it's southwest, south, even westerly, that you would be going left. The best breeze, the best days are when it comes out of the southwest in the morning and you have a pretty strong one and it hangs on to about noon and it just clicks a little bit right. We get, 15 to 18 knots out of the west the whole afternoon. And it's really, really nice. Few and far between do we see that, but that's a really nice direction. So out of the south here, that means the breeze is coming from the shore. Out of the southwest, you still have some shore involved. Out of the west, a little bit of shore involved, and then it moves to the north. The north, there's no shore involved. It's wide open, very much like being outside of Newport, very much like being in Biscayne Bay in Miami. We have oscillations that move from the right to the left every 10 minutes. That's a pretty good number to think about when you're sailing from a direction due north, northeast, northwest. You just have, all that lake, but the breeze is oscillating. So, if you're sailing in an offshore breeze, then you want to be set up to go shifty, be really good on your tactical game. If you're set up out of the north, it's going to be a speed race and you're going to want to time those shifts. They're about 10 minutes apart, maybe a little longer sometimes, but, we get a little bit of everything. Now you move on to the easterlies or the southeasterlies. Normally if an easterly is there, it's not a good thing. If we have an easterly and it's light, that means that there's rain coming. If we have a southeasterly, I'd love to be able to help you out with that, but I see it like 2 times a year and I've still yet to figure that out. So, but I do know anything out of the east usually means a little bit of rain and some sort of front approaching. So something to keep in mind when you're here is if it's out of the east, it's probably going to be a pretty tough day of racing, meaning, the wind's just not going to be stable and it's most likely going to die off. We're going to get some sort of rain. But the cool thing about the rain is when it pushes through, the backside of that is usually a westerly, northwesterly, and we're going to have a lot of fun the next day. So those are the directions that we really look at. Like I said, southwest, west, northwest, northeast are the ones that we sail at. Very similar to the East Coast. Our difference here being a Great Lake and being in a bay is dealing with, and this is one thing Kris is going to have to hit on here because he's kind of the lake distance sailor. One thing we deal with is shear. a ton of shear, especially June and July. The wind, the lake's cold, the air's hot, the wind doesn't want to really settle in. So, Kris, can you explain, a little bit about what you see with wind shear here? I mean, it's pretty tough to explain, but I know that, that's something we dealt with at J24 Nationals. I think we dealt with it at the Lightning Regatta we had here. And obviously we deal with it in the Lake Ontario 300 that we've done. But the wind always seems to be a little bit different top to bottom, no matter what size of boat you're on,
Yep.
So
no,
give us
very
a little
true,
insight on that.
I'm not sure I have all the answers for that one, but I guess I would say, if I were trying to come up with a game plan to deal with that kind of big condition, first, like you said, know that it's out there, know that it's a thing. It's certainly, like right now on the lake, I just did a delivery back from the 100 miles on the lake last week, and there's quite a big temperature inversion. I mean, right now the mid-lake way out in the middle is the water temperature is probably 45 degrees. And as of last night, it was already 68 degrees close to shore. So there is just a lot of, thermal differences in, where that wind is coming from and when it's getting close to shore. So it does cause you to have that effect where, let's say your lower telltale and the lower portion of your sails are really full, and you're almost getting like this backwind, or your Windex isn't jiving with what you're feeling. And I guess in general, what I would say is, having some telltales on your shrouds and things like that. And my gut would be to try to focus on the lower portion of your sails and just keeping them driving. And, if you are getting into those, if it's a really light and sheer day, you might do some more, you might be more inclined to keep, footing off to keep going on it. Versus, let's say, if it's, a little bit windier and you're not going to pay a huge premium on tacking, then, you can sort of tack on those little, almost auto headers where, half your sails aren't agreeing. It is very tricky. I don't know if I'm, helping a ton with the answers, but I think that recognizing it's out there and then just kind of getting with your team and having a game plan. Okay, when this happens, here's the condition. The default is going to be, let's roll into attack, or let's really everybody keep staying on our sails. We want to keep going this way. So just something I think more to discuss with your team to come up with sort of a game plan on how you want to handle it, just to be ready more so than me telling you what to do about it.
I think you mentioned something great in the beginning there when you're dealing with the Lake Ontario or Lake Michigan or whatever, but when you're dealing with shear, especially in a smaller boat, you don't really have a lot of options. And you said, let's make the bottom sail the driving force. Whether that's right or wrong, pick one, stay with it, look at that, and make sure that your speed is relative to everybody else. And in Rochester, I would say June and early July, you're dealing with this. It's due to the cold water, and then you're having warm air. So the breeze, it doesn't really fill in, or it comes in waves at different heights off the water. And that's what you have to deal with sometimes here. As the summer goes on in Rochester, it's beautiful. You have a thermal, the end of August to September, you just have big frontal wind that comes through, and almost, 3 to 4 days out of 7, you're in 10 to 15 knots. So it's really, really nice towards the end of the year. Something that I mentioned before, and Kris, you'll give some tricks on this as well and what you look for. But, I'm pretty sure that all of you who have seen or been to Rochester, heard about Rochester, you've all heard that you only go left. And you're not wrong, but there are times where there are signs of not to do that. I'll tell you the few signs that there are to do that. And one of them was, yes, looking at the point, is the wind left of the point that's west of us. Yeah, we want to play the shore, the geographical shifts. I think, later in the day, it's really prevalent to go left. During the middle of the day, like I talked about oscillations before, they're there. You don't have to bang the left corner. But as we learned in J24 Nationals, or I think the Lightning as well, again, Melges 24s, when the wind dies a little bit here and it's been running from the west, as we talked about with this current, you've you've now got the whole lake plus the river coming at you. And that's why now all of a sudden, with the wind being out of that north direction, would you really want to go left? You know, we saw it at nationals the whole time where I'm like, it's out of the northeast here. You can go right. It's fine. And I think the first 2 races we did that, I was wrong. And the left-hand side just paid, and there was no breeze over there. It was a total current thing. So that current and light air even adds, you know, more to wanting to go left at this venue. So, you know, like I said, 8 times out of 10, going left, you're going to be in the top pack, and that'll be great. You know, sure, there'll be that one time out of the right where somebody wins, and you can wash your hands of that because that doesn't happen often. But Kris, what do you see? You know, what do you see here during the day? I mean, are you a big proponent of going left no matter what around here? Or is there something that switches your mind in Rochester that you're like, okay, we're going right? Like, when does that happen?
Yeah, I think when, for me, and I guess I'll hedge a little more towards at least afternoon or evening sailing, when it's out of a westerly quadrant here, you know, southwest, west, anything south or to the left of that Braddock's Point area, I think it's pretty hard. You're pretty hard pressed to you know, to think that the left isn't a better place. I think when you're in that initial phase of a sea breeze filling in and it's kind of in the northeast, again, in that, depending on the positioning of the course and things of that nature, I think, again, you want to be, you know, it almost shifts it again to thinking that left because you have, you know, that's where the lake is, right? Like, let's say it's a northeast, the deeper water or getting further offshore tends to be a little bit to the left side. So when that's first filling, again, that's a good place. I think, yeah, once it's into an easterly quadrant, I think it's a lot. It's really a lot more of a crapshoot, and you have to really trust your eye. I guess my 2 cents on being here long enough and being burned by the left when I am convinced that there's more wind on the right. I just think, you know, certainly trust your gut. It's not a total blind go left scenario here, even in a westerly, but certainly if there's even mixed feelings about the pressure being even either side, you know, then yeah, I think it's just going left, and that definitely is the way to go.
Yeah. I think the only time I've ever seen the right work is when the initial thermal fills in. You can kind of play that, and then eventually, as the day goes on, you know, the left becomes more prevalent. So, you know, those are kind of things that we look at when we're looking at weather here, when we're thinking about, you know, where the wind is, and you know, we keep talking about Leftchester. It's pretty hard when your uncles and your friends that have grown up here for 30, 40, 50 years get real mad at you when you don't go left. So they know what they're talking about. And so we've been listening to them. And as time goes on, we concur. You can go left 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, and you're going to be just fine. So, you know, with that, you know, prepping for a regatta in Rochester is pretty fun to do. I think that there's so much weather that comes through here during regatta time which our regatta time is from August to, you know, late September. And that's all frontal for us. So you can have no breeze, you can have 25 knots, you can have a beautiful 10 knot day. It's going to be all over the place. So leading up to a regatta, what do you look at? Obviously, you look at forecasts. Kris has some awesome sites that we can look at for regattas, but you really want to try to get sailing and practicing. If you're serious about doing well here, you want to get here early, and you want to have about 3 to 4 days of sailing. If you're serious, if you're not, it's totally fine. I mean, I think a lot of people do really well showing up the day before. I always need more practice, but I always get beat by the guy that just shows up a day before. So you can go either way. But I think to really study what the weather pattern's doing here, you need about 4 days, because you'll see a little bit of everything. And I talked about this before. There'll be this kind of trend that happens. So, if you see a little bit of everything, you make notes on it. You understand, oh, gee, we were sailing in the east breeze here. So, this worked when I went right for a little bit. And then, oh man, the next day it was out of the southwest. So we went left, but we didn't have to win the pin to win the left all together. So you pick up on those little hints as you sail a couple of days here in a row. And like I said, only in 4 days, you'll get almost every direction that you're going to need to know. It's not like you have to sail here forever to get every direction. So, that's what's pretty cool about Rochester is the weather does change pretty quickly. So, Kris and I talked a lot about weather, a lot about what we look for in wind. Now we're talking about what we can prepare for in a regatta. I started with talking about here, how many days of sailing I'd like to do. And then that comes into, I don't care what boat you're sailing, whether it's a Melges 24, whether it's a Lightning, whether it's J70, J24, 22. I set my boat up a little bit differently depending on where the breeze is coming from. I think Kris will hit on this as well. I'm sure he's got some different ideas. But if you're out of the south, if the breeze is out of the south here, I'm setting it up for the starting line. We always say set it up for what you have at the start. Well, I'm setting my boat up so that I have height at the start. Because what I want to do is get over the top of the group or pinch up to the guys that are weather of me and be able to hit the first shift and tack. Because there is going to be, as much as we talk about going left, you can go left and play a couple of shifts, middle left, and really put some miles on the fleet if you do it right. And in my opinion, when it's out of the south, it's a little more of a little less of a speed race, a little more of a tactical race. And so to be able to put yourself in positions more than just, running away from the fleet, I think is pretty important. Now, when you come back to the north, breeze out of the north, that becomes more of a speed race. That's your Miami, your outside at Newport kind of venue where you need to set your boat up accordingly that makes it as fast as possible. Yeah, sure, you want to live in lanes off the starting line, but once you're in a lane that is livable, you want to be able to put the bow down and just get away from the fleet. Normally you'll have about a 1.8 to 2 mile leg, and you'll see oscillations that are 10 minutes apart and 10 to 15 degrees altogether. So those are something that's kind of how I set my boats up. That's what I look for. Out of the north, I'm going for a speed setup. Out of the south, I'm probably looking to be able to pinch people off quicker and hit shifts more than speed. So Kris, do you have anything to, maybe I'm wrong on some of that compared to what you usually do, but do you have anything to add how you would set boats up here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're giving really good advice on on the technical aspect of really fine tuning your setup and trim for the conditions, and I would agree completely. I mean, I think just for more of a general sense in preparing all the way around, both for the type of gear you're going to bring and for the the wind and waves you can expect. I mean, obviously some of it is somewhat self-explanatory by just looking at a chart, but just to reiterate, yes. And anytime we're in a southerly direction, it's going to be very flat water here for the most part. I mean, it really would have to be 25, 30 plus to even have more than a light chop out of the south. Even 2 miles out is not too big. And the flip side of that, if you're coming for the regatta and you see it's going to blow, from the west northwest for 2-3 days, you're thinking totally different mindset of, the gear you're bringing. You're thinking, there can be huge waves out of that direction. So really, a lot of pounding up wind, changing your setup for a powered up through the waves mentality, right down to, obviously bringing more fouls and, shifting your weight around for the waves. All those kinds of things are just, pre-race things to, notions of where the wind is from. So, anything from basically due west to almost due east, or northeast anyway, you're going to get some good sized waves with, given there's a good wind. So I think that's the big takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, when you come to Rochester, don't just pack your shorts and t-shirts in August and September thinking that the water's still warm. It can get pretty cold pretty quickly, depending on, what kind of front we have coming through. But, I will say, setting your boat up here and preparing for a regatta, the big key things are get some practice in at least 2 days to 3 days, because you're going to see a little bit of all the weather. Try different setups, try a speed, make sure you have a speed setup and kind of a height setup. That's something that I've learned with a lot of the guys that I've sailed with, and they keep teaching me about a couple of different types of setups for even all the wind ranges. You don't just have, your light, medium, heavy wind, your setups for your boat. You have your light, fast setup, your light, height setup, all that stuff. So it's really, really kind of nice to go through those. That's kind of how that's how I prepare for every regatta, really, is having a little bit of time at that venue. And as Kris showed here, take a look at all these weather sites. A lot of these are really, really good. And then the best thing is to grab a local around here besides us. Everybody here is super helpful, and they will all say the same thing: go left, and if you don't, you're wrong, and that happens. But I think everybody here is just excited that we in Rochester get to host so many major regattas, and a lot of people don't know that about us, but we're pretty pumped. The Rochester Yacht Club does a really good job at this, and that's something upcoming, where we've put bids out. So we're really looking forward to having some more regattas here. Upcoming events right now, Laser Great Lake Championships. And for me, since sailing for me is pretty much done until September, it looks like I may actually do that event. I don't even know if I know how to hike anymore, but we're going to try. And then the U.S. Sailing Match Race Championship is also in September this year. Both are still on. We're really keeping our fingers crossed there that they go. And then you'll see there down at the bottom, we have future bids, J88 North Americans and 420 Nationals. There's talks of J70 and the far future. So, we try to keep the regattas coming here, and we love having people here. We think that this is one of the best venues in the country due to how much space we have to host boats, and how close, the racing venue really is. It's a 10-minute boat ride out to the race course. And, and there's no shortage of rum at the yacht club. So everybody has a pretty good time. Kris has got some pretty good places to go to here. Kris, where are some of your, I don't know, in Rochester, we go to a bunch of different bars, but on the lake, we have a couple different bars and we have a couple of different delis. Do you have
so I just,
some of your best?
Right. Hopefully we're not droning on too much for everybody here, but yeah, just to quickly hit on some of the more logistical stuff, right, of coming to Rochester for your team, for your setup. A couple things really stick out. One, the club in general and just the people of Rochester do a phenomenal job of putting crews up. So another thing to keep in mind coming here is that very often we do a great job of housing teams. So yes, there are some local hotels that are not far away. There's if you can see my screen, there's stuff, all over that's all pretty decent, but just, to keep that, there's no like go-to spot. I would tell everybody I'll stay at this hotel because it's close. Everything's about 15 minutes away, so it's not too bad. But right in the Rochester community around the club, people are extremely welcoming to housing, full teams up, J24 is 5-6 people or whatnot. So I would definitely look into that, contact Travis or I or anybody, from the club or organizers. So you're going to the club in the morning. There's right here on this little map here is a place called Don's Deli, which is like literally,
Best
45
breakfast sandwiches ever.
45 seconds from the yacht club. They have great breakfast sandwiches, and you can order your lunches there. Call ahead, they'll have it all ready. They know sailors, and they'll have stuff in bags for you and just ready to go. Right across the river here, there's a couple of great places to eat that sort of overlook the yacht club if you're not going to go to the yacht club. A lot of great places to eat right around town. That's all really nice and close to the club. I mean, there's, a dozen places within 5-10 minutes. So that's kind of nice. It is away from the city, just so people know, like the city of Rochester, which does have also some phenomenal restaurants and places, is more like 15, more like 20-ish minutes away. Again, worth a trip, maybe one night, but there's plenty for you locally without having to be, let's say, downtown for any enjoying that kind of stuff. Then, just quickly on the venue, like in the basin, a couple quick little tips for like, keeping your boat clean and your bottom, things like that. The basin is not really swim worthy, so keep that in mind, right? You
wouldn't want to do that.
You can use a cheap diver or a brush, and good to keep after the water line. So another quick thing, yes, you will get some growth here in Rochester. It is fresh water. It's not going to be bad, but you will get a little bit of a scum line and stuff like that on there. So something to keep in mind. One of the things you can do is come right out the river here and kind of just, hang out right on the other side of the pier here, where the water is generally a lot cleaner and pretty warm. Jump in, swim the bottom. But definitely something to keep in mind. If you leave your boat in the basin for 2-3 days, you're going to have at least a scum line on the water that you should take care of and keep an eye on. There's, all that kind of stuff. There's ice and everything else at the yacht club. That's some of the basic logistics. One other quick thing, there's, Shumley Marina is right there. There's a ship store that has 90% of what you need for your boat. And there's a West Marine about 10 minutes away. Also pretty, has a ton of stuff. And then Trav, if I'll take this moment just quickly to show a couple of those weather sites, and then maybe we turn it to Josh and see what people are still asleep or what. Okay. So here's one I really like. I think everybody can see my screen here. This is a marine. This is one of the links I've had. It's a pinpoint marine forecast. Getting pop-ups here. Here we go. So if we can see right here, you can see this little square is sort of the racing area, right? So I can just pinpoint that forecast, and I find this forecast to be pretty accurate. So that's one quick one there. The other one, this is the end of Rochester Pier. So it's a great one to get the data from, right? We can see right now it's unfortunately frighteningly light air. But again, it's a great data point. It's very close. It's at the end of the pier. It's fairly about the closest one you'll get to your course. And if I zoom out here, right now, if everybody sees the screen, there's a mark in the mid lake, which is not in yet or not active. But again, a great one to check in to see, like, is there sea breeze coming? What's really happening out in the middle of the lake that might be coming our way. So another great spot. Let's see if I can get at this one here. Okay, this is a kind of a cool one. Again, oh boy, what did I do there? So this is lake forecasting, surface currents. So pretty cool website that you can kind of zoom ahead and check the animation for what's expected. You can see there isn't a ton of current really, but there's, about a quarter knot here near, just off Rochester, but this will shift around. This system does a pretty good job of illustrating that, of what may happen in the next few days, and takes into account all that kind of stuff. So another kind of a neat site to check out. And I guess
that will show you right there why you will go left in Rochester in light air. So
so I'm back to me, and I don't know, we'll see. How we doing, Josh?
Doing good, guys. That was great. I wish I had that maybe back at the start of August before we came up there for the Nationals.
Don't we always had that?
Yeah, maybe we would have done better than mid-fleet there. But no, that was great, and I can definitely speak from experience. The Rochester Yacht Club is more than welcoming. Great place to be able to have an event. And as you mentioned, many other classes are potentially coming up there for big events. So if you're watching or watch this later and you're head of a class, or you're a participant in the class, and you're looking for a host for a big event, definitely get in touch with these guys at Rochester Yacht Club. They got a great venue. Obviously, I think one of the greatest things is the racing course, as you said, 5 minutes right out there. It makes it really nice and easy. We had a postponement on land, and we're able to get out there and race right away from that. And great ability to put boats in quick and get the boats out quick too, which is great. We did have a couple of questions here, and I had some of my own as well. one question came in and said, regards to the current in the lake, how does, if at all, the profile of the lake bottom and the depth affect tactical decisions? Does race committee generally always set up in the same place? Discuss.
That is a great question, Chris. I'll let you handle the surface, the bottom of the lake, but
Right.
the race committee doesn't set up in the same place all the time. We actually know we have quite a lot of line out there, so we can go pretty far out. Like I think we've, some of the major regattas, we've been sometimes 3.5 miles out into the lake, and it's, it's 100 some odd feet there. Normally we're sailing in about 50 feet of water. And then as you get closer to shore, obviously like off the pier, it's about 20 feet. The currents, I haven't seen it running any differently, depending on how deep the water is, as you would suspect, on the eastern shore. But that's because we just have a very soft trickle in the middle of the lake, depending on wind more than, more than the bottom of the lake. So Chris, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think yes, there is some difference between, the contour of the lake does have an effect on the overall current of the lake. But I think that we're sailing pretty close to, in pretty similar water depth. Very rarely is there a course configuration that would have, let's say, the starting line in 70 feet and the weather mark in even 30 feet. It's just not, it's sort of a gradual drop off. So there's not a huge, gradient out there that we usually see in our race course. It's kind of rare. Maybe if you were sailing out and, there was a southerly, the weather mark would probably be in a little less water, sure, but not by a lot. Like I said, we're talking 30 to 50 feet, which in the scheme of the strength of the current out there, I don't think you'd see a big difference there. I know 20 feet is big. Like if you were in Newport and you were in, let's say you were sailing up near Jamestown and you were in, 30 feet versus 15. Yes, it would be I don't think it's quite as big a deal. Slight difference, but nothing to sort of prepare for on the start.
So next question comes in from John Fadre.
Oh boy.
And he's asking, are north sails allowed at Rochester?
Not anymore, John. You know this. Come on, man. Good question though, John. Next one.
So my question comes in, kind of more to what you were talking about, Chris, in terms of, off the water type of stuff. And I think that was a great explanation of all the things right around the club. I definitely experienced some of the delis there and everything. I was able to go into downtown Rochester, go to an awesome barbecue place down there. Maybe it matches up with your favorite, but I want to know what your guys' favorite restaurant or favorite barbecue place is in downtown Rochester, or best place to send a crew for a good crew dinner.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hit this one first, and Trav probably has some other. I mean, Dinosaur Barbecue is sort of one of our signature spots, so I think that's definitely worth a visit. Try to avoid it on a Saturday night where there's not 500 people there, but it's a great spot. The food is phenomenal. It overlooks sort of the High Falls area and downtown. You're sort of like right on it's a good spot. So that's one of my favorites. But there are, I don't know, probably too many to mention. There's a lot of excellent food in Rochester. There's another one. Oh God, what's the new place at the Strath Allen there, Trav? Is that Char?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. Really good steak there. There's what's the one at Inn on Broadway?
Reds.
No,
the
steakhouse at the Inn on Broadway. I'm telling you, I think of the name of it. Anyway,
that sounds like out of my league.
That's an excellent spot. No, I mean, there really, for a smaller city in upstate New York, Rochester has phenomenal restaurants. So, I mean, obviously some of them are always changing, but definitely hit up one of us or ask some locals, because there
I'll
are some.
interject on the restaurants one, because what people don't know, Rochester has, and I'm a very unhealthy eater, and I'm okay with this.
There we
Rochester has the best cheeseburger places.
Right.
I have never been anywhere in the world that has better cheeseburgers than us.
go.
Gaylor's, Don's, and then the old garbage plate, which if you are at the yacht club and you're drinking a little bit and nighttime hits and you're like, oh God, I wish I had some food in me, you order a garbage plate. And it's 2 cheeseburgers over mac salad and home fries. And if you can put one down, you're pretty much a champion. So that's one of my favorite things.
Yep, it's a good call.
So
And that's Nick Tahoe's garbage plate.
that's right. Famous Nick Tahoe's.
Yeah.
So we have our U.S. Sailing president on watching, Corey Sertle, home club
Uh-oh.
Rochester, and she definitely asked you recommend the garbage place. So she's on the same
All right.
wavelength as you guys as well.
Perfect.
I'd like to ask, I know you guys both have sailed plenty of regattas up in Rochester in various different classes. Is there one regatta or event that sticks out to you guys as the most memorable, or your favorite regatta that you had up in Rochester? I mean, Travis could always go back to junior sailing too.
Yeah. Oh, let's see here. Most memorable. Well, it has nothing to do with winning any of them, because I've never done very well in Rochester, which is pretty funny. But yeah, I would say the most memorable regatta that I've done here, I was, and I'll have to look this up again, but I was probably 12 or 13, and it was on a soling with my uncle John and my cousin Jack Odenbach, and it was one of the old soling regattas, the Firecracker, and we had about probably 25, 30 boats. Maybe we were younger. Maybe we were like 10. But I know Uncle John did every single thing on the boat while we just stood there and played with whatever we were playing with. And then the guys that ended up winning, which I laugh really hard, is I think first place was Andy Horton and second place was Alan Terhune. So I laugh, like we're just sitting in this boat. And that's one of the most, one of the fondest memories I have, though, is sailing with my family and knowing that those guys are actually out there trying to win races. And here we are like 10 years old, just out there for a sail. So, it's where I learned to sail. It's kind of my family aspect of sailing still here. And I love that about this place.
Chris, what about you?
For me, it was and I just was trying to kind of sneak at my phone to remember the year, which I felt terrible. But I think somewhere in the 2006, 8, 9 range was the J24 North Americans were here. And there was a day where it blew 30 plus out of the west, absolutely monster waves, warm day. Just one of the few times you could get the J24 planing, where the downwind was just full plane the entire time downwind. Boats were, fully capsized. I remember Mark Hillman's team standing on the keel of their boat of a J24 trying to get it to come up, which is a pretty rare sight. And one of our friends, his boat actually, one or two boats actually technically sank and were raised up again after a pretty hard wipeout. But anyway, everybody ended up being, okay, and boats were all right, and which is why it's easier to tell the story. But it was just a phenomenal day of sailing, where you're just at the top end of what the boats can take and what this lake can turn out, which is some just epic conditions and huge waves, just surfing down waves the whole way. And so, and it being fresh water in your face, which is always a little nicer than the salt.
Seems like the big breeze follows the J24s up there to Rochester in the 2012 World. We might have had some huge breeze up there at that point.
We had we had a squall come through. I don't think we really had a day where it was
right.
I think we had like a day where it was beautiful, just 25 knots, but we had a squall come through that was blowing Genoas out, and it was one of the last. I remember that was one of the last legs going upwind, one of the races, and just everybody full hike. And we had the Genoa all the way out past the lifelines, and I'm just flogging the main, and the boat still can't stay on its feet. And then it goes back to 5 knots right after that. So
Right.
pretty crazy.
Knowing that, and I've been up to Rochester as well, and I think that you guys, showcase it really well, that it's very friendly up there. There's always someone to call on if you need help. So, if people are up there in Rochester for whatever fleet they're in, if they're in for Regatta or just out for, a regional race, how can they get in touch with you guys? I'm sure you guys are available to help, talk, just shoot the breeze about One Design Sailing. How can they get in touch with both of you? I know you both are at the same office, but I'm sure you have different phone numbers, right? You don't share a phone.
Yeah. If we're going by phone numbers, we're on the website. You can easily get my email or my phone number off the website pretty quickly at Quantum Sales Rochester. Also, if you end up in Rochester and you just walk into the yacht club, I'm sure one of those guys has our number, and normally we're there. So please look us up. It's not very hard to find. And I'm always looking to get out of the office. So if you want to go sailing or put your boat together, give me a call. I'll help you do it. So.
And what are your email addresses? Just in case people are listening and want to jot it down, they can shoot you a note.
Yeah. Mine is T Odenbach, Odenbach at quantumsales.com.
Yep. And mine is K Werner at quantumsales.com. And yeah, I think Travis and I would both agree. It's not, if you're coming here and you have North Sales, don't think you can't call us and we're going to hate you or something. I mean, we're not about just selling you sales. So we just want to help people out and, we want them to enjoy coming here and tell them what we can about the venue and the area. So.
Right. Except for Fadre, he doesn't get any help, right?
No love.
And I know Liam wanted to tune in too, but he's in the middle of a meeting, so I know he'll watch it later afterwards. But Liam Fadre runs a great program up there as well.
He's amazing. So we're really pumped we have him as well.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us. And this was for all of you watching, this was the debut of our local knowledge series. And we are going to be on again at the end of June in 1 month's time. I think it's June 24th. 2 more of your compadres from Quantum from basically the other corner of the country down in San Diego. And we got Mark Reynolds and George Zabo from the San Diego loft. They're going to do a little local knowledge San Diego. And we're going to be working with Quantum going forward to do a little bit more local knowledge talks for other places like maybe Annapolis, Corpus Christi, Charleston, and so on and so forth. So I think that should be really good. And really want to thank you guys for joining us today. It was a lot of fun.
Josh, thank you for having us.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us, watching this as well. And if you enjoyed today's session or any of the other sessions that we're putting on, please support our efforts to build a community of active and engaged sailors through the Starboard Portal by purchasing or renewing a U.S. Sailing membership. We have a lot of great content, as you heard, coming up on the schedule. And thanks to U.S. Sailing members, we're able to adapt and evolve to better serve sailors with content like this. Please visit mem.ussailing.org to join or renew your U.S. Sailing membership today. And just a small little plug as well, stay tuned on Monday. You might want to tune in on Monday evening, I think it is around 4 or 5 p.m. We're going to have a 25th anniversary panel of Mighty Mary led by Don Riley and Katie Pettibone. And we're going to have Molly Vandermoor and Melanie Roberts on as well, kind of talking about the past, present, and future of women's sailing and what Mighty Mary did going into that. So that's going to be really cool. Tune in for that. But Chris,
Great.
Travis, Quantum Sales Rochester, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, thanks.
Bye, guys.